Chapter 15. Claire opened her eyes. Cal was gone. She was lying on the couch in her beach house trying to make sense of the bizarre experience. But it wasn't something she could dissect. She simply had to let it be, accept it, cherish it. Then she remembered what he'd said about visiting Colin. She couldn't resist. She had to see him. Gently, lovingly, like a living invitation. Claire closed her eyes and pictured Frank and Colin's brownstone. She let her mind wander to the previous Thanksgiving, to the octopus dish Colin had prepared especially for Em. Then she focused her mind directly on the sound of Colin's laughter and found herself at his bedside. Gently, lovingly. I have no idea what I'm doing, Claire whispered as she walked to the foot of their bed. Frank was snoring, and Colin had fallen asleep with a pillow clutched over his head. Claire walked around to Colin's side of the bed and knelt down beside him. "Hey, Colin, what are you doing?" she asked, experimenting. She was surprised when he responded. "Stupid expense reports. Where the hell have you been?" He turned away from her and repositioned the pillow over his head. Claire persisted. I was getting us lattes," she said, crossing her fingers. "Thank God," he grumbled, rolling back toward her. Claire didn't know how to get him back to the beach house, but she was sure there had to be a way. "You're in your office?" she hedged. "No, Claire, I started going over the expense reports in the men's room. I'm tried setting urinal cakes on my desk to achieve the same ambiance. Of course I'm in my office. Get your bony ass in here and help me. It's been crazy around here. Everyone's been saying you're dead," he ranted, like he'd had her on speakerphone. Frank snorted and stirred next to Colin for a moment, but went back to sleep. Claire giggled with relief. She focused on his desk and was relieved when she opened her eyes to find him sitting across from her in his leather wingback chair. "Well," he said. "Well, what?" "Well, where's my latte?" She was about to answer when something scurried across the room. When she spun around to see what it was, it vanished into the darkness. At first glance, it looked like Colin's office, but dimly lit, and little things seemed to be shifting and changing. His deceased mother's crystal candy dish had sat on his desk full of Frango mints for as long as Claire could remember. Now it held cufflinks. Before her eyes, they turned into tubes of paint and sleeping pills. The window fixtures morphed back and forth between Roman shades and plain ugly office blinds. The color of the walls and carpeting kept changing too, as if Colin were mentally redecorating his office every 30 seconds. Claire's feet were wet. She looked down to discover the room was flooding. More creepy little critters could be heard splashing about the room. Claire pulled her feet up and tucked them beneath her, perching precariously on the chair just in time to see the walls moving in. They stopped abruptly, as if they'd been caught in the act. Colin just typed and occasionally kicked something away without so much as a glance. Claire shuddered. Then she noticed Colin's paintings. There were 2 in his office, and at first they appeared to be breathing, like the tapestry had. Claire forced herself out of her chair to get a better look. She realized as she stepped closer to the one behind his desk, the untitled one of the snake swallowing its tail, that it wasn't breathing. It was pulsating like a heartbeat. All the stained glass pieces in the painting shifting slightly with each beat, practically begging her to touch them. She was too afraid and backed away. "I'm waiting," Colin said curtly without looking up. Claire jumped, then laughed at herself, just like the old times, the same snipping attitude he used to give me whenever he couldn't reach me for more than 24 hours. She recognized the familiar faint blue vein pulsing near his temple. It was, in fact, keeping perfect time with his paintings. A nervous giggle escaped her lips. "Your latte. Right, I forgot." She wanted to conjure up something decadent with whipped cream and chocolate shavings, but she didn't know how much time she had. If they were going to the beach house, she had to gently, lovingly get him out of the office before he woke up. "I drank it. Come on, let's go. I'll get you another one," she said, still not having the faintest idea how she was going to transport him to the beach house. "First you disappear, then you drink my coffee?" Claire folded her arms. She'd come unprepared to deal with Colin's cranky side. She waded through the ankle-deep water over to his massive fish tank, glancing over her shoulder a few times to make sure nothing was following her. This place gave her the creeps. She had to get him out of here. He could be such a brat when his feelings were hurt, but she knew it was more than that. He was grieving the loss of their friendship. Out of the corner of her eye, she caught him staring at her. He looked away the moment she turned toward him. Claire cracked her knuckles, walked over to Colin's desk, and in one sweep of her arm cleared it. "Have you lost your mind? I've got to get these done." "Come on, let's go." "I'm sorry, you haven't been able to reach me, but I'm here now, Pooker." "Don't Pooker me. You didn't leave a note, an email, not even one measly text. Were you raised by wolves? Unless you're dead, you always send me a note." He gathered his papers in a huff. Claire was astonished. He'd just presented her with a perfect opportunity to broach the subject of her death. But then she remembered they were basically mucking around inside his mind. "Then you know where I am. I miss you too, but I'm still around. Remember the dollhouse?" "I don't know what you're talking about." "He's pretty pissed. I don't know if you'll be able to get anywhere with him tonight." A voice spoke from the doorway. Claire jumped at the sound of the voice and backed around. Behind Colin's desk, she hadn't expected anyone else to show up. This is no co-worker cameo. It's a kid. A red-headed, freckle-faced, baseball mitt-toting kid. He casually tossed a tattered ball in the air and caught it. Claire stared at him, dumbfounded. "Shut up, duty head," Colin muttered and shot the boy a quick, good-humored glance. "You know each other?" Claire asked the boy. "All our lives. Think, Claire, think hard. I'm not going to just give it to you. Forgive me while I have a little fun with this. Colin's dreams aren't exactly chock full of intellectual stimulation, and he always makes me be 10 years old." "I beg your pardon, death breath." Colin stuck his tongue out at him before he punched some figures into an adding machine. Claire shook her head and wandered over to the black leather chairs in front of the aquarium. The water was drying up, revealing soggy grass instead of carpeting. She smacked the arm of the chair a few times to check for any funny business. To her relief, the chairs were simply chairs. She sat down with her elbows on her knees, resting her chin in her hands. Eddie pushed each wall back about 5 feet before he walked over and plopped down in the chair across from her, still tossing the ball in the air. She could smell the oiled leather glove. She looked up to see him smiling sympathetically at her. "How old are you really?" she asked. "I was 32 when I overdosed," he whispered back. "Oh, Edward, you're his older brother. So why 10? Claire asked as she studied his untied Converse high tops, blue jeans, and green striped shirt. Colin stood up. "I'm going to feed some baby bunnies to the boa constrictor so you two can talk about me freely," he announced, pulling a shoebox from a drawer and tucking it under his arm. He was sporting a silver cord just like Gus and Gerald. Claire gave him a worried look as she watched him leave the room with his box of bunnies. "Oh, God, I bet he means Marilyn in HR." "Lucky guess," Eddie replied, waving at Colin as he left the room. "My guess is I'm 10 because he always wanted to be the big brother. After footing the bill for all 3 of my trips through rehab, he's earned it." "Why are you here?" Claire asked. "Comfort and strength. I think I'm a symbol for doing what he really wants. He actually envied me that. Despite my life being a train wreck, I did what I wanted when I wanted. Colin mostly does what others want him to do. Hates that about himself. You've seen him around our father." "True." Claire propped her elbow on the arm of the chair and held her head again, as if it were heavy with new information. "He has your old job. He and Frank remodeled your brownstone. Case in point, he stepped right in to save the day. But he'll never live up to the legend. Dad's done a hell of a job rewriting. I get to be a martyr instead of a junkie. He still insists I was kidnapped for ransom and murdered. Unbelievable the lies people tell themselves. Try a hot dose in a flop house. Just wanted out of my mess. Suicide? Affirmative." Claire suddenly forgot about the getting Colin to the beach house. She'd stumbled onto something she had to investigate. For a second it occurred to her that this could be the sort of thing everyone kept trying to tell her she was missing out on. The answers to all of life's questions. "What's it like for you over here." "Well, as you can see, I'm not charbroiled," he said, spreading his arms out for her to inspect his person, the ball in one hand, the glove on the other. "Thank God," she laughed and covered her mouth. "I did spend some time watching others make stupid mistakes, unable to stop them. Got a good taste of that kind of hell. I also had to deal with the aftermath, the horrific pain I caused my friends and family, especially Colin. That really sucked, to put it mildly. That's hell. Custom made to fit like a glove." He smacked the ball into his mitt. "What did I expect, harps and angels?" The floor had morphed into a perfectly manicured little baseball diamond. Claire nodded and touched her toe to home plate. "Now I help. I'm a guardian, and I'm not going back. I'm good at this. I specialize in breathing that little bit of hope into people when they think they can't hold on another second. Science, too. Anything to snap them out of it. But it doesn't always work. It didn't for me." "Do you know Wendy?" "Oh, yeah, I'm a regular." "So someone sent you a sign right before you died?" "I was alone in a basement of this flop house. No food or anything around. No reason for this rat to head up my way. But he scurried straight up to this piss-soaked box spring I was sitting on. He looked old, kind of wise, Claire nodded, her elbows perched on her knees, her hands folded beneath her chin. "He actually sat up on his hind legs like he was saying, 'You really going to do it?'" Claire shook her head, entranced. "I saw myself, the rat I'd become. Maybe they should have sent a dove or a cat, something cuter." "Cats can't be trusted," Claire advised him. "Rats are ugly, but they're survivors. Guess I was unwilling to see that. I wanted out. I put the needle in my arm, and he sat there staring. He wasn't going to let me die alone. That's the last thing I remember." "Your guardian? You know it." "So you're Colin's guardian?" Claire asked, taken with the notion, wondering what kind of resume landed him that job. "Nah, I'm just a part-timer with Colin. I listen when he needs to talk, troll a bit, try not to interfere too much. I have other souls to look out for, people I didn't know in that life." "Even so, I'm glad you're looking out for him." "I still want what's best for him. That's why you have to tell him." "Tell him what?" "Come on, Claire. Losing me was hard enough. Our mom died giving birth to him, so he lost her before he even got a chance to know her. He's lost too many friends. Now he's lost you, too. He'll get through this, but he needs to talk to you about it, so he can have some closure. As you can see, he's pretty torn over that. He wants to know what happened, but he doesn't. He knows you're gone, but he doesn't. Help him." Eddie tossed her the ball. Claire surprised herself by catching it. "Okay, I get it." She stood up and tossed it back to him. "Will he remember anything when he wakes up?" "A part of him will, like a little seed you're planting in his subconscious mind. That seed will help him work through it on his own, at his own pace. It's less jarring to the psyche." "You're pretty smart for a death breath duty head." "Thanks. I'll see you around." "You better get going. He goes to bed late and gets up early, this sicko." "Right," Claire said, walking away, suddenly wishing she didn't have to say goodbye. She liked Eddie. He'd brightened up the place considerably in the short time he'd been there. She turned to tell him so, but he was gone. Heading for the door, she stopped to take a closer look at one of Colin's paintings, the other untitled work, The Stained Glass Prison. Claire's hand rose to touch the canvas. The moment her fingertips grazed the acrylics, a wave of passion rolled through her body. It wasn't like any kind of passion she'd ever felt for another human being. She'd only felt this as a small girl whenever she'd managed to be completely alone in nature. It was a feeling that had been asleep somewhere inside her for a long time, one she'd forgotten all about. She lost herself. The colors swirled up around her and swallowed up the ugly fluorescent lighting and shape-shifting knickknacks. She was lost in Colin's gorgeous painting, drunk with light and color. Then suddenly, as if an invisible hand had sprung up, she was cut off from the passion. Even worse, she felt like it was gone forever, and she was being forced into a tiny box, where inescapable, monotonous office images played over and over in front of her. She couldn't move. She couldn't breathe. Something grabbed her hand, and pulled on it with such a force she thought her body would rip in half. Claire forced her eyes open. She and Colin lay gasping on the floor of his office. Gone was the baseball diamond. It had become a twister mat covered in big, brightly colored dots. The painting hung undisturbed on the wall. They stared at it, panting, hearts racing. Colin broke the silence. It's not really untitled. I call it Banker Murders Artist. What do you think? I think it's poison. Well, it feels like you're dying when you're always forcing your passion to shut up. Only speak when it's spoken to so you can do the responsible thing and keep everyone else happy. Jesus, Colin. It's okay. I'll find a way out someday. I see feeding the boa constrictors relaxed you, she joked as she sat up. No, it just depresses me to the point where I don't have the strength to give anyone a hard time, not even you. I have this baby bunny dream all the time. There's more than one boa constrictor? Marilyn and Dad, he answered, covering his face with his hands. The bunny screams sometimes. We are not staying here. There would never be a better time to show him what she'd done with his paintings. She didn't know how the idea came to her. She didn't care. Claire got to her feet and yanked Colin up with her. She grabbed a blue ballpoint pen from his desk and dragged him over to the prison painting. She drew a crude door as fast as she could and prayed it wouldn't take her right back to the painful place she'd just been. Why did you do that? Colin yelped as if she'd carved into his bare skin. I had to. You'll see, she said, as she grabbed his hand, threw the pen down, and pressed her other palm against the ugly drawing. A brilliant indigo tunnel shot out of the painting and sucked them up inside its whirling light. Claire's skin prickled with an electric charge. Whenever she caught sight of Colin's face, his teeth were gritted, his eyes bulging. They swam and flew through this glowing tunnel, locked in hand, until she saw the source of the indigo energy. Yes! The indigo door to the beach house came up fast. As suddenly as the tunnel had appeared, it disappeared behind them and dumped them right on their feet. The light of the last of the light rose up their backs, steadying them like loving cosmic hands, then disappeared into the evening breeze. Claire reached for the doorknob and turned to Colin for a second. Are you okay? I didn't get any peanuts. Did you? He's back. They broke into laughter as they opened the door and spilled into the entryway. Hey, I want one of those, he said, pointing to the enormous black and white print of the two of them at the company picnic. That's nothing. Consider it done, she laughed as she rushed to the middle of the room. Welcome to my gallery, she shouted as she threw her arms up with a flourish. Colin gasped. He seemed to stumble about as if he were stoned, wandering from painting to painting, sometimes laughing, sometimes stopping to cry into his hands. Claire gave him some space to take it all in, but eventually walked over and linked her arm through his. Claire, you have all of them, even the ones from high school. You didn't even know me then. Where are we? He was so overcome with joy he could barely get the words out. When he turned to her, his face fell. He knew the answer to his question. No, you can't be, he pleaded, grabbing her by the shoulders. I'm sorry, but I am. Bullshit, what happened? Come on, she said, pulling him through the French doors, out onto the deck. The moon was orange and full, showering them in a pale light as they walked to the steps and sat down. The sound of the waves had a calming effect, and Colin let out a long sigh. Claire buried her feet in the sand and closed her eyes as a cool breeze blew her hair out of her face. You made all of this? He asked. Yeah. Like, I Dream of Jeannie or Bewitched? Bewitched, I guess. Jeannie never did a damn thing with that bottle. I know, right? Just a new throw pillow once in a while. Something. This is unfreaking believable, Colin breathed. Thanks. Met anyone famous? Princess Di, Freddie Mercury? Claire shook her head apologetically. No one? You'll be the first to know, I promise. I damn well better be. The unavoidable hung in the air between them. All right. Spill it. You sure? Colin took a deep breath and folded his arms. Bring it. I was on my way to meet you at Starbucks when I was hit by a truck on the expressway. I was chasing a cat. You're never going to find me because I was in a stupid costume, thank you very much, with no ID. They think I'm homeless. Christ on a tricycle, Claire! I'm so sorry. It's not your fault. It's the way things were supposed to go, trust me. He shook his head and patted her on the knee. There are worse ways to go. Just ask Jane Mansfield. Thanks. Sometimes I think you are around me. You were really there with Em and I when we were playing dolls, weren't you? Absolutely. Don't ever doubt it. Keep yourself open like you were that day. Are you kidding? I was terrified. I've never needed a drink so bad in my life. Well, I'm glad you didn't have one, because I'd be willing to bet that makes it harder for me to reach you. Claire poured sand from one hand to the other and discovered a small piece of green sea glass. It's so incredible you can do that for Em, Colin added, picking up a stick. It's nothing compared to what I used to be able to do for her. That's not true. It's everything, he insisted, drawing a star in the sand and tossing the stick into the tall grass. What about Anna? Colin asked, remembering how he'd found her clinging to Shadow on the deck that day. It's harder with her, but I get through. Colin's gaze felt heavy as Claire rubbed the silky smooth sea glass with her thumb. And Paul? So far, next to impossible. Sorry. Colin reached down and gave her hand a squeeze. I'll get through to him. It's just going to take some time. What's that beeping? Claire asked, looking around. Microwave. I don't eat. I don't even have a kitchen. I know I don't have a microwave. Smoke detector? I don't think so, Claire replied suspiciously. Fine, I tried to work it in. I don't want this to be over, but that's the alarm. We've still got a few minutes. Frank always hits the snooze at least 3 times. We've got less than that, she grabbed his hand. They stood and hugged each other until they cried. Colin pulled back and wiped the tears from her cheeks. How am I going to live without you? I'm still around. Just keep your eyes open, she whispered. It's not the same. I know, she said, hearing the beep again. Give Frank a hug for me. He rubbed his eyes, and he was gone.